Hey folks, welcome back to episode 2 of the Red Room training at RSMP Tabletop. I'm just here by myself today, but I'm going to do my best to fill in the space until Eric returns. Now, for today, we're going to be discussing what we previewed last episode, which is going to be deploying with priority and deploying without priority, counter deployments, and what to consider if there are terrain throwers on the first turn, if they can throw terrain. Now, it's going to be important for us to sort of like break things down as best we can, but I'm also know that I don't know everything at the end of the day. So if you guys have any suggestions or comments or criticisms, because these are much more subjective than the last video, let us know down in the comments. Get in touch with me and we'll happily add more sort of content down the line to sort of address like, additional viewpoints, thoughts that we may not even covered, but we're going to do our best to try to cover the 3 topics that we previewed today. So with that, let's get to the video. Now, the first section we're going to be talking about is going to be talking about deploying with priority and without priority. And this is assuming we've already passed the step of sort of figuring out whose turn it is and who is deploying second. Part of that situation is going to be the person that doesn't have priority gets to choose what side of the board they're on. That is a more expansive topic that we can talk about at another point. So before we move on to our first section, which is deployment with priority and without priority, do recognize that this is already moving past the step after the dice roll off where the player without priority would be able to determine what side of the board edge they'll be deploying on, which would then might entail some terrain considerations. We'll cover this topic later on. Let's move on to our first topic, which is priority deployment. And I want to start off by highlighting what is a benefit of going first with priority for deployment, also for going first. And also, let's also talk about the other side as well. Now, if you're a person that won the priority roll-off, that means you have to deploy down a model first, okay? Now, this means that because you're going first, the big benefit is that you could potentially pick up an extract first. And considering extracts are so important for the tempo of this game, you need to make sure that you're in a good position to sort of leverage someone that's able to grab an extract that's preferable to them and maybe a setup that works for them before their abilities. Now, on the flip side, if you are a person that didn't win priority, you will get to see where they put down their first model, and you can sort of counter deploy back and forth, back and forth. Now, assuming we're working with an even number of models, that means that the person that doesn't have priority will get to place down the last model, okay? Which means that you have a big amount of information that you can use to sort of like put down an important piece last, okay? Now, this could change depending on how many models the one person has versus the other, but we can get to that at a different section, okay? But in the meantime, just know that these are 2 important things that we need to have in the back of our minds, which is personal priorities get to go first, which means that they can have an extract sort of a pick of the litter, or if you're going last, that means that you can potentially see more information as far as their deployment and being able to counterplay as a result. So if you have priority deployment and you're going first, that means that ideally, assuming we're not taking account any medium-based long mover safe grabs, we mentioned in the first video from the series as safe grabbers, you want a model that can be deployed with relatively little information given, but has a lot of versatility to be able to perhaps pick up one of the choices of extracts that's on the board, and the ability to sort of take hits or not take hits, essentially. Either you tank through your stat line, the abilities that they have, or a combination of, like, let's say martial arts stealth, a high number of dice pulls against many attacks, or the ability to reactively teleport or advance away after they're attacked. Various things that sort of keep you safe in some way or form, okay? So for instance, like characters like Approximate Midnight, I think are very interesting as a person that's going with priority, right? So you can put her down in the center and you're essentially giving no information away, just like we talked about in the first video, where she can long move twice to get to either extract or the center extract. And you'll know that she will be able to go first to pick up something, right? So that's like an example of a really good model that you can put down. There's other models. So like, let's say if you see like M'Baku, for instance, is only a small base medium mover, but is able to go to either extract in the center line here, depending if you, as long as you deploy them centrally, and you can sort of like figure out like, it's like, okay, well, if there's like, dangerous people over here are not dangerous people here, you can sort of move to like a section that is less dangerous to pick up something now. So that's sort of what you want to consider. Like if you are deploying first, is that you want to give away as little information as possible to work with, okay, for the person that's deploying second. That way they are less able to sort of react to your deployment. Let's say you don't have priority and the opponent gets to put down a model first, and it's now up to you to sort of react to that. So what's kind of important for you as the person that doesn't have priority is that you get to see if there's any information that the person's giving out. All right, so if they put out something like Proxima in that initial example that we have, okay, then that means that you don't have much to work with, unfortunately. But that means that you can also deploy your models that have very low information as well on your side. So for instance, like if you had Black Panther, who's also a long mover, that means that you can also do a similar sort of thing. And you sort of can go back and forth trying to give each other information as you deploy models, or not give information as you deploy models. But there will come to a point where like some big decisions will be made as far as like placement models goes, and that therefore the other opponent is able to react to them. Before we move on to our first example deployment, going back between a priority player and a non-priority player, let's talk about character counter deployments, because I think that's going to fuel a lot of our discussion as far as like what's happening on the board. Now, characters in Marvel Crisis Protocol have various stat lines, very important numbers that sort of dictate like what are they strong against, what are they weak against. Now, you have your 3 defenses. You got your physical defense, your energy defense, and your mystic defense. And likewise, you can have attacks that can be of any of those 3 types. Certain characters may be more front-loaded on one stat versus the other, or they just have average stats, but it may be a really buffed or very weak stat against a certain specific type of attack. So one great example here is Logan the Wolverine. He is a 4/4/2 defense character, which means that he's strong against physical energy attacks, but relatively weak to mystic attacks, okay? Now, if you are the other side, you would potentially like to throw a mystic attacker basically in the Wolverine, especially if it's someone from long distance, out of Raging's Claws. So for instance, like Ebony Maw can outrange Wolverine because he's only a range 3 attacker, versus the range 4 attacker that Maw is, right? And Maw has a 6 dice mystic attack that is able to like really bully Wolverine. Okay, now if there's a point in deployment, let's say that we deploy Wolverine relatively early, that means that a person is able to counter deploy with Ebony Maw. Okay, which means that in this section, since they're going to be relatively siloed to this section of the board for a bit, if Wolverine does move up his medium to sort of grab this extract here, so he goes up here, grabs the extract, right? That means that Maw on his turn, he is a small base medium mover, and we can stay outside of range 3 of Wolverine, right? So we can, even potentially stay on a point, and we're still able to now attack him from a long distance and sort of bully him, right? In that case. So that's a very extreme example. I mean, usually 2 defense doesn't happen too often. They show up on some of the weaker models, like your 2 threats and your 3 threats, and occasionally a 4 threat like Logan. But those are sort of important sort of like weaknesses to sort of keep in mind. And you want to sort of keep those characters sort of away from that type of effects. So the abilities of characters in Marvel Crisis Protocol are varied and vast. So besides just your defense stat line and the attack stat line, let's say in our Ebony Maw and Logan example, you can also have different things be a combination of like your other stat block figures and also abilities on the models that may help you sort of have a more favorable matchup into another person. So for instance, we have Cyclops here on this end. He's a great range attacker, and he's able to push models that are size 3 or below, potentially on his attacks, okay? Now, we have Black Dwarf here, okay? Now, he is relatively slow-moving model, but let's say he was able to go first and pick up an extract, and this is actually a fairly favorable situation for him because despite him getting here and Cyclops can potentially attacking him, Black Dwarf has a combination of just raw hit points. So he's got at least 6 hit points on the front side. He's got damage reduction in his Invincible Skin ability, passive, that will reduce enemy damage by 1. And he's also naturally a size 4 character, which means that Cyclops is not able to push him as a result. So it's not just the defense number sometimes. Sometimes the counter abilities that are printed on as part of superpowers, innately or reactives, can help him resolve some matchups. But also, if there's any sort of damage reduction, either like the Invincible Skin from Black Dwarf, or let's say that's a nice punch from Juggernaut. These are all great abilities that can help you sort of pick up something and not feel like you're just completely SOL, when you're in the middle of nowhere. All right, so let's try to do an example in real time, actually, of a possible deployment example. And we're going to assume that the Black Order has 1 priority and the X-Men team has lost priority for the initial deployment. Now, what I'm thinking about as the Black Order side here is that I would like to give out as little information as possible, but maximize my options here. Now, the first model I'm going to put down is going to be Proxima Midnight, as we discussed. She's a great person that's able to get to any of these 3 extracts, down the center here. All right. And now, as the X-Men player, they have a choice to respond. Now, there's not much information to work off of. The invincibility on Proxima Midnight makes her relatively tanky, which means that, she is probably good against any attack types for the most part. So for our example here, then, we're going to counter deploy with King T'Challa here. And he's also a long mover with a pretty good attack. So that means that we're also going to keep our options open as far as which extracts we're able to get. Now, the next example is that we have a choice of either Ebony Maw, Corvus, or Black Dwarf that we can now deploy. So given the other models on the other side, I see that there's a Logan the Wolverine, and that means I really want to place down Ebony Maw against that character if possible. And for Emma Frost, she is a relatively weak model against physical attacks, so we would like to put physical attacks into her if possible. And then we also have to take into account that Cyclops is able to, push our other models away except for Black Dwarf. So we have to sort of feel out what information they're able to give us and sort of counter deploy from there. But because one of our models that has to be deployed next, we have to give away more information now finally. So for our instance here, I think Corvus is the most relatively well-rounded character next. So we will deploy them, let's see, about here. And this will let them V-shape into either of these extracts if needed. And, there's also some innate abilities that these two work together very well with, but we can ignore those for now. This is purely just, going off of attack types that they have available and the ability for them to move and how far they can move at this point. Okay, so now X-Men, see that there's a Proxima and a Corvus here, but neither of these have been deployed yet. Now, as the X-Men player, I am very afraid of Ebony Maw going into Logan the Wolverine, okay? Which means that I really don't want him to be placed against him. So we could probably have to pick either Emma or Psylocke, Emma Frost or Cyclops. Ugh, sorry, Scott. So that is the character we're going to have to deploy next. Either it's going to be Cyclops or Emma Frost as the next character. Given the example of the board state here, since Cyclops is going to be relatively bad against Black Dwarf, I'm going to hedge my bets that we want to sort of have him front load this side of the board versus the other side. That is the Black Order player. So we're going to take a chance and deploy Cyclops over here. That way he is also able to respond, let's see, pretty well to either extract grabbers. So if one person ends on each line, Cyclops is able to move up and attack him at least once, and maybe he might even be able to get on the secure, for instance. Okay, now, so that's deployed. It's okay, well now my best character against Cyclops is Black Dwarf, and now I can commit him to this side over here, but then this side is really, really empty. Okay, and I have to be sort of okay with that or not, at the end of the day. So in that case, we are going to, let's see. I think since we have priority, we're going to take a chance now and put this down because we want our favorable matchup here. And now, we now know on the X-Men side, Proxima's here, Corvus is here, and Black Dwarf is here. Which means that really Ebony Maw can go here if she wants more coverage, or Proxima has to be the one to sort of like begin coverage over here then, in that case. But then it's going to create all sorts of problems for the Black Order player. So, again, since we want to avoid the Ebony Maw Logan matchup, I'm going to have Emma actually go on this side over here to cover this basis. All of the physical attackers are more on this side, which means that she's more safe on this side. Proxima wants to come over, or Ebony Maw gets placed over here. The matchup isn't too bad for Emma Frost to sort of deal with these characters. Now, unfortunately, the X-Men player did not put down where Logan was going to be. Now, because of that, I have to sort of guess where they're going to commit Logan at this point. So, for coverage purposes, I think we are going to have Ebony Maw go over here. That way, if Proxima goes on this side, that means that at least like there'll be some back of her in case she gets bullied by Emma Frost. X-Men player now knows that Ebony Maw is over here, which means that Logan can more safely now deploy over here. And so should Proxima now go here, Wolverine can sort of move up and attack her. Or if she doesn't, that means that Logan could be one of the ones to pick this up pretty well. And between his larger defense against these attack types, which are just energy and physical, and his healing factor, he feels more confident in weathering the storm until the next turn from over here in that case. So that's one example. There's a lot of like variables, obviously, but like this sort of like you want to start thinking about what matchups and what abilities sort of like counteract each other and how they interact with each other for deployment, and also like how much information you want to give away, right? In that case. All right, let's flip the script, and we're now going to go from X-Men having priority and Black Order not having priority, and let's see if this real-time deployment shakes out differently. Again, we're just going to go through our thought process in real time as we're doing this. So I have first deployment as the X-Men player, which means that I also, again, want to give out as little information as I can. So this is where your medium base, medium movers, your small base, long movers are like great like all-stars in this step. Okay, so we're going to put King T'Challa as our splash guy here. He'll be down the center. He'll fill the exact same role as Proxima did, giving us a lot of options for a person that can grab an extract. And, he's got a high health pool and good defenses, so he should be able to be relatively tanky. Now, same side, the first couple moves are going to be very similar. We also don't want to give a lot of information as Black Order, so we're going to deploy Proxima down here again, okay? Now, since we have an even odd numbers as X-Men, and they have priority, they know that they won't get to deploy the last model. This means, in this case, that you cannot protect Logan from a counter deployment from Ebony Maw, which will be a bad time for him. So what I'm going to approach with this instead is that deploy him with the intention of backing him up in the first place. Okay, so I'm going to deploy Logan over here. Okay. Let's see. Actually, yeah, we'll do this over here so he gives himself more options. Okay, as we're going first. All right. Now, this gives us a little more like breathing with Logan. So like if you now deploy Logan, it's like okay, Ebony Maw will probably be in somewhere in this area. Okay, but at least now that with our V-shaped deployment, he has options to either pivot like one direction or the other, or he can start like making his way to the other side of the board, if need be. So as the Ebony Maw player, we are also going to do something fairly similar. So we will also deploy our V-shape here. So now the matchup is sort of like, cemented down here. Okay. Okay. So next up is that we have Cyclops and we have Emma. Now, Ebony Maw is really good into psychic attackers because he's got a 6 psychic mystic defense, I should say. So Ebony Maw's 6 mystic defense. Emma Frost only has like a 5 dice mystic builder, so that means that this matchup is not particularly favorable for Emma. So in that case, what we want to do then is just have her go here instead and sort of like lay into whoever will come in next. All right, so the way I'm thinking as the Black Order side now is like, okay, we got Cyclops over there, and again, we can probably take the matchup with Black Dwarf pretty well. So let's have Corvus go over here, deploying in our V shape. Okay, and these two characters are able to sort of like support each other. And finally, we have Cyclops. Now, since Ebony Maw is a relatively good range attacker, we would consider like someone that can actually go into him a little better. So let's try with Cyclops as our counter deployment against Ebony Maw here. Okay. All right. So Cyclops is going to have some pretty good abilities to sort of displace Ebony Maw. So even if he goes into Logan, there is a chance that we can sort of like attack him and push him away from Logan. And if we generate enough power, even if we don't get the push, he's got the field leader superpower, and that will allow him to sort of pull Logan back from a bad situation if he can avoid it, or at least make it so that Ebony Maw only gets 1 attack in the Logan instead of 2 the next following round. Okay, so everyone's deployed there. So now, since these two characters, Corvus and Proxima, have ability that where they need to be next to each other to work well, they will probably cover this flank like pretty well. So now I'm going to go and deploy Black Dwarf on this side because, as we discussed before, he's relatively good against Cyclops. And this will, because of a short movement, he's allowed to sort of cover these secures and maybe even pick up this extract if it shows up as a potential option. And yeah, there we go. We got an even deployment from this side, so it's a little different. But yeah, I hope that helps you guys sort of like think about interactions between different matchups and stuff like that, and sort of like what goes into a thought process when deploying, because it isn't just willy-nilly, you just put a model down and whatnot. It should really be like a large consideration of like, it's like, hey, what in the amalgamation of your characters, like stats, their abilities, their attacks, their ranges, like what can we think about to sort of make it more nuanced and more favorable to you at the end of the day, right? All right. As a variation of the prior deployment that we just did, let's talk about a situation where there's an uneven amount of models from one side to the other, and sort of how that's going to impact the information you're going to have during deployment and your options, okay? Now, let's say we took a Black Order list that's 20 threat and has these 4 models, versus an X-Men list with a couple of Wakandan splashes that has 20 threat with 5 models, okay? Now, if you are a person that has priority as Black Order, that means that, unfortunately, you have to deploy a model down first. You're going to deploy back and forth, and you're going to notice that the X-Men team is going to have a lot more information than you do. So let's walk through it, okay? So, assuming you have priority as Black Order, you, again, I would always recommend you just put down Proxima first, because she doesn't give away a lot of information, okay? Same wise, let's say we'll go this way with King T, so he can reinforce any flank that he needs to or pick up an objective. All right, now Black Order is next. So we are going to, let's see, commit Corvus to one side over here. So again, we're going to deploy in that V shape. So he gives himself maximum amount of options. Okay, so Corvus is over here. All right, we are then going to deploy, let's see. We'll actually deploy Shuri over here, which is a great model because you can sort of use her to sort of push any size 3 when she gets to attack anybody. So against Black Order, which is all size 3s, for instance, any models that they commit to any of the mid lines that she is able to push in that case. Okay, and and you're not giving away a lot of information by doing so. So we have, let's see, we have Thanos, and Thanos would like to cover quite a bit of the board. He's got the ability to place his friends, though, within range 3. So unfortunately, you sort of have to sort of pre-measure out like what range 3 looks like. So yep, if we put her next to Proxima about here, you're able to use his abilities to sort of like portal people up and whatnot. This is all very nitty gritty, but like, just know that there's support abilities. The long short of it is that if there's support abilities that your model has, make sure that they're able to actually use the support abilities from deployment to help your friends get into the positions they need. So for Thanos' positions, his nerf version of himself recently, or ratted version, I should say, is able to still portal up his friends using the Cosmic Portal. And also there's also the Space Stone as well that is able to teleport people up as well. So these are all like very good considerations to have for them. So next thing is that the X-Men will now get to kind of deploy. They have 3 models left. They only have Ebony Maw to work with here, which means that you can very much figure out where Logan needs to be to not get hit by this guy. Okay, so so since the characters are not super mobile, I am just going to put Emma, let's say over here. Okay, and we'll put Ebony Maw over here. This is because since Thanos is there, he's able to help his friends move up, but we are a very limited amount of information. At least I know that on this side, Ebony Maw is able to defend against Emma Frost's attacks like pretty well because of the high amount of dice defense he has for mystic attacks versus the amount of dice that Emma has. Additionally, now on the X-Men side, we have 2 models left. So you can see that just from 1 model being off, as the Black Widow with 4 models, you now have 2 models with X-Men that you're able to place down with maximum information. There's no more models left to place for the Black Order, so you can now effectively position them for maximum, efficiency, So Logan can kind of go over here now pretty safely. Does not need to worry about Ebony Maw taking a chunk out of him. And Cyclops, let's see, since you ever have a character that's able to push characters on this side, you can now commit Cyclops to this side to cover this basis. So now you have 2 models on X-Men's side that are able to push people on the Black Order team. You've also now avoided the bad matchup between the Mystic Attacker and the Mystic Defensor, being very asymmetrical in that case. And you have I would say a relatively favorable deployment on X-Men side. Now on the flip side, the reason that you hope that this is okay for Black Order side is because the raw power of the individual models are able to sort of make up for this sort of asymmetricalness in model count. But yeah, at the very least though, as the X-Men player, you would feel more set up for success in this case, I would say. If we were to flip this around, there wouldn't be too much of a difference, but just know that if X-Men had priority, it would mean that they have to deploy a model first, but also instead of having 2 models they get to place last with the full information, you would just have 1. So you're able to protect 1 model. So sort of figure out if you have 1 model up on the opponent for deployment, what model you need to protect the most, and sort of like placing them more favorably. So in this example, you just need to figure out where Logan needs to go last that isn't by Ebony Maw if possible. Otherwise, he probably will be taking a pretty big beating in that case. So this will be a relatively quick section because we would like to cover this topic more in depth in a later video, but I just want to give a quick call out to characters that are able to throw terrain at you turn 1 because they just have enough power to do so and they have the movement to be able to get to some terrain in that case. The way this ties into a deployment is because you may have models that are fast, able to get to the midline and get something, but because you probably spend your last bit of power to pick up an extract, you may not have the power now necessary to play the Brace for Impact restricted card, which is very commonly taken to sort of avoid collisions in this. So I just wanted to call that out that you should be very careful in your deployment because if you have a character, let's say like Hulk, Angela, that are able to move quite a bit of distance and also throw terrain, round 1, that you need to be very aware of that. Otherwise, bad situations could happen. So for instance, just the simplest example is like, let's say we have Toad, okay? Toad's usually a great character, to be able to pick up stuff because he is able to have wall crawler, he's got a medium move, and he's also able to interact with objectives from range 2, which is usually pretty great. So let's see, we want to be like, let's see here. So like, just a quick example, and we can talk about this more when we give a more extensive discussion of Toad later on, is that, you can do something like this. There could be a secure right here, an extract right here, and he's able to reach it, grab it for his 1 power, and now you have it on your side, okay? Great. Now, later on in the turn, potentially you might have a Hulk that, if he was close enough, he could sort of like do this maneuver where he walks forward again, and he's able to throw size 4 terrain from range 2. Okay, so he's pretty close to be able to do that. So let's say we want to be on this secure point right here. So he's moving in to get on the secure point right here. And if there's some terrain next to him, like you could potentially throw that at Toad before he has the power to brace for impact, okay? So in this case, we're going to spend our power here. Check this is within range 2, which it is very, very easily. And then he's able to throw that terrain medium, which is well within range to hit Toad here, okay? Now, being that this is a size 4 terrain piece, that's 5 static damage is coming at Toad, so he could potentially die from this if he doesn't roll any dodge dice, and that could put you in a world of hurt for it instance, okay? So if he doesn't roll, well, he just perishes, or dazes, I should say, he's going to drop his extract within 2, and now Hulk, because he's a character that starts with 3 power, and the throw cost was only 2, he's able to pick up this extract, and that could set you really bad as far as like tempo goes and whatnot. And that's something we can talk about in future videos. But I just want to give that a quick call out so that, I don't want this to be a gotcha for new players or, current players that, if you're playing against a Hulk, this will be a feels bad sort of moment there. But yeah, we'll cover this and more topics in more turn 0 and turn 1 sort of ruminations. All right, folks, thank you for coming with me and staying with me for this long journey. We covered a lot of different topics. I'm hoping to keep it relatively general so that it's more applicable to your game overall. We did go over specific model abilities and whatnot, but I just want you to sort of start thinking about your characters more holistically, from the ability for them to move, from their ability to defend themselves, and their ability to attack, and from their ranges as well. We can talk about this more in depth in future videos, but I just wanted to keep this general for now. In the meantime, I just wanted to say thank you again to Iwargame.net for great mats. This is a new forest map that they have done. It's great for your Wakanda theme battles and also any forest settings. So please check them out at Iwargame.net. And we also would like to thank Baron of Dice, as usual. They create a lot of great custom dice projects or specialized dice products for every game, from your skirmish games, your big war games, and whatnot. So please check them out at baronofdice.com. Again, that's baronofdice.com. Links to both the Iwargame and Baron of Dice in the description below. We also like to thank Jarvis Protocol for helping us with the character stat blocks that we need to help illustrate all the different movements and defenses, whatnot, and any sort of text for rules and whatnot. So thank you again to them for helping us make our list building lives a lot easier for Marvel Crisis Protocol. With that, I think we'll close out the video now, and we'll look forward to the next video that we'll do. So please keep an eye out. But in the meantime, I would like you to please let us know how we're doing below. We've done 2 videos at this point of the Red Room training. We want to make sure that we're covering the topics that you would like to get covered. If you think there's a next through line that you would like us to focus on, please let us know. I will also correct that the movement for the small tool is actually short going forward. Thank you to one of our commenters on that. I'll try to incorporate that going forward. But yeah, it's been a blast. I hope you guys had fun and learning some more Marvel Crisis Protocol and sort of getting more confidence in your game at the end of the day. So until next time, have a good one, and we'll see you then.